All right, buckle up, because today we're going deep on a story that'll make you question everything you think you know about justice and revenge.
It's one of those cases, that really gets under your skin.
We're talking about Pedro Rodrigues Filho,
Yeah, better known as Pedrinho Matador.
little Pedro the Killer.
That's the one.
This guy was a Brazilian serial killer, but hold on, because there's a twist.
A big one.
His main targets, criminals.
It's a real head-scratcher, right? Makes you wonder, can a serial killer also be a vigilante?
Was he a product of his brutal upbringing? Or was there something else going on?
Or both, maybe?
So many layers to unravel here.
To get to the bottom of this, we got to go back to the beginning. Pedrinho's childhood.
Let's do it. Paint us a picture.
All right, imagine this. You're born with a deformed skull because your own mother was attacked while pregnant with you.
Oh, man. Talk about a rough start.
That's just the tip of the iceberg, though. Violence was a constant in Pedrinho's life.
So was he always destined for a life of violence? Was it inevitable?
Well, his first murder happened when he was only 14 years old.
14.
You heard that right. His dad was a school security guard, falsely accused of stealing by a crooked politician.
So what happened?
Pedrinho, driven by this incredible sense of injustice, decided to take matters into his own hands.
Oh, boy.
He tracked down the politician and, well, killed him.
It's horrific, obviously. But there's also this, I don't know, a chilling sense of purpose there.
Yeah, it's a weird mix of emotions, isn't it?
Totally.
And it gets even more intense. Pedrinho believed another guard was the one who actually framed his dad. He ended up killing that guard, too.
At 14, it's mind-blowing.
It's hard to wrap your head around the level of premeditation, the cold calculation at that age. It's disturbing.
Did these early killings kind of set the stage for his descent into, the criminal world?
I think it's safe to say they played a huge part. After those murders, he took off to São Paulo,
Which was?
a hotbed of criminal activity back then.
Right, right.
But here's the thing, he wasn't just randomly killing people.
He had a type, so to speak.
He was targeting criminals, drug dealers, anyone he considered a menace to society.
So that vigilante label starts to make sense then.
Exactly. And you have to consider the context. This was a time in Brazil when crime was out of control.
Lawlessness everywhere.
People were desperate for someone, anyone, to step in and do something.
So, in their eyes, maybe, Pedrinho was filling that void.
In a twisted way, yes. You can't deny that his actions resonated with some people who felt totally helpless against the criminals.
I can see how that would fuel his sense of self-righteousness.
Oh, absolutely. He saw himself as some kind of, I don't know, a warrior, a dispenser of justice in a world that had gone mad.
Like he was cleaning up the streets.
Right. And there's this one story, it's really chilling. His girlfriend, she was murdered by drug traffickers.
This is where it gets even darker, isn't it?
Yeah. Pedrinho went on a full-blown rampage after that.
Hunting down anyone he even suspected of being involved.
It wasn't even just revenge at that point.
What was it?
It was about making a statement, sending a message.
And the brutality of his methods, I've read about it, but it's almost beyond description.
It's hard to even fathom.
I remember reading that he even tortured and mutilated some of his victims.
It went way beyond any sense of justice or revenge. It was pure rage.
So how did they finally catch him?
Well, his reign of terror had to end eventually.
I guess so.
He was 18 when they finally caught him.
18.
Threw him into the Brazilian prison system, which, by the way, is notoriously brutal.
Yeah, I've heard stories. You'd think being locked up would put a stop to the killing, though, right?
You'd think so, wouldn't you? But you'd be wrong.
Wait, he kept killing in prison.
Oh, absolutely. His body count actually went up behind bars.
No way.
It's crazy. The prison environment, it was almost tailor-made for someone like Pedrinho.
All that violence, the corruption.
It just fueled his warped sense of justice. He claimed he was purging the world of evil.
Targeting.
Rapists, murderers, gang members, anyone he saw as deserving.
There's that story, though, right?
Yeah.
About him doing something truly horrific to one of his victims.
You talking about the heart thing.
Yeah.
The story goes, after killing a rival gang member, he cut out the guy's heart and ate a piece of it.
It's just, how do you even process something like that?
You can't. It defies all logic, all sense of morality.
So we have this incredibly complex character, ruthless killer, a twisted sense of justice, but somehow he still managed to gain a following.
It's a strange and disturbing paradox.
And it doesn't end there. This story's got another twist coming.
Oh, yeah, big one.
We'll have to dive into that next time.
Definitely.
This is one you won't want to miss.
Trust me. So remember how we said this story has another twist?
Oh yeah, I'm ready for it.
Well, hold on to your hats, because in 2007, Pedrinho was released from prison.
He was what?
Released.
After all those murders?
Yeah.
They just let him walk?
Yep. It was a legal technicality.
You've got to be kidding me. I bet that didn't go over well with the public.
You're telling me. A lot of people in Brazil were furious. They thought someone like that, with his history, should never be allowed back on the streets.
Can't say I blame him. So what did he do? Did he just lay low?
Nope, not at all. In fact, he did the exact opposite.
Oh, this is going to be good. What did he do?
He tried to reinvent himself.
Reinvent himself? How do you reinvent yourself after a life like that?
Well, he went the social media route.
Seriously, social media.
Yep. Started sharing his story online, talking about his past, speaking out against violence, warning young people about the dangers of crime.
So the serial killer turned anti-violence advocate. That's quite the transformation.
It really is, and it raises so many questions. Can someone like that truly change? Was it genuine remorse or just a way to manipulate people?
I mean, it's impossible to know what was really going on in his head. But you mentioned Dexter before. How similar are they, really?
It's an interesting comparison, for sure. They're both serial killers who target criminals. But how they're viewed, especially in pop culture, is totally different.
Why do you think that is? Is it just because Dexter is fictional?
That's part of it, for sure. We can separate ourselves from the violence in Dexter because it's not real. But I think it goes deeper than that. Dexter's character, he's got this moral code.
Right, he's very meticulous, deliberate.
Exactly. And that makes him, in a strange way, more likable to audiences.
He's almost like a tragic anti-hero battling his own demons. Pedrinho, though, he's a lot harder to sympathize with. He's raw, brutal, unpredictable.
You hit the nail on the head. Dexter's violence is often seen as this twisted form of justice.
Cleaning up the streets when the system fails.
Right. Pedrinho, on the other hand, was just chaotic.
It makes you wonder about the influence of pop culture, doesn't it? Do shows like Dexter make us more accepting of vigilantism?
It's a valid question. Do they blur the lines between righteous vengeance and cold-blooded murder? It's uncomfortable to think about, but we have to consider it.
Okay, so we've got this Dexter comparison, the whole debate about redemption, the complex societal context.
Yeah.
What happens next?
Well, even with his attempts to turn things around, Pedrinho's past wasn't going to just disappear.
He made a lot of enemies.
And in 2023, those enemies caught up with him.
You mean?
He was assassinated, shot multiple times outside his home.
Wow. It almost feels like, I don't know, poetic justice.
You could say that, but did it really bring any closure, any answers to the questions his life posed? I don't think so.
If anything, it just adds another layer to the mystery.
Exactly. Even in death, Pedrinho continued to divide public opinion. Some people mourned him, saw him as a folk hero who cleaned up the streets.
While others celebrated his death, saw it as justice finally being served. So where do we go from here? What's the takeaway from all of this?
Well, for me, it's a harsh reminder that breaking the cycle of violence is incredibly difficult. Pedrinho's life was shaped by violence from start to finish.
And it highlights how blurry the lines between justice and revenge can be. Pedrinho thought he was doing the right thing, but his methods were so brutal, often random.
It also forces us to face this uncomfortable truth. The line between good and evil is not always clear-cut.
Even in the darkest of hearts, a sliver of hope can exist.
But that hope can be fleeting, especially when someone's life has been so intertwined with violence.
So Pedrinho's journey might be over, but his story continues to raise questions, spark debate, and really challenge our understanding of justice, morality, humanity.
It's a story that'll stay with you long after you hear it.
Absolutely. We'll have to leave it there for now. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the dark and fascinating world of Pedrinho Matador.
So we've been talking about Pedrinho Matador, this Brazilian serial killer who targeted criminals, a vigilante, some people called him.
A very complicated guy with a really dark history, but who tried to turn his life around.
And then was killed himself, assassinated in 2023.
It makes you think about, redemption, second chances. Can someone like that ever really escape their past?
I don't know. It's a tough question. And even in death, he divided people's opinions. Some saw him as this folk hero, someone who stood up for the little guy when the system was failing.
Because Brazil was, and I guess still is, struggling with crime and corruption.
Right. And the police weren't always, effective. So some people saw Pedrinho as bringing a kind of rough justice to a world that needed it.
And then others, of course, saw him as a straight-up monster who got what was coming to him.
Yeah, there were no middle ground opinions on this guy.
So it's like his story highlights how easily things can break down. When the justice system doesn't work, it creates this void.
And someone like Pedrinho steps in,
Hmm.
takes the law into his own hands, which of course is never the answer. But it's something that can happen when people feel desperate, like they have no other choice.
It's scary, actually. But okay, let's circle back to the redemption question. What about his attempts to turn things around? The social media stuff, talking about peace and all that.
Was it real? Was he actually remorseful? Or was it all an act? Who knows?
Maybe a bit of both. I mean,
Mhm.
people are complex.
Absolutely. I'm sure even he struggled to understand his own motivations.
And that's what makes this story so fascinating. It's not black and white. It's all shades of gray.
He was a monster to some, a savior to others, and the truth is probably somewhere in between.
And it's up to each of us to figure out what we think. About him, about the questions his story raises.
It's not easy.
His legacy is, wow, it's almost like a warning about what can happen when violence takes over, when the system breaks down.
It forces us to look at the dark side of human nature and to really think about justice, revenge, redemption.
Yeah, it's a lot to take in. But it's so important to confront these issues, to learn from them.
Otherwise, we're doomed to repeat the same mistakes.
So, to wrap things up, was Pedrinho Matador a product of his environment? Was he a vigilante? A monster?
Maybe he was all of those things.
It's a story that sticks with you, makes you think. And that's why we do this deep dive, to explore the dark corners of human history, to learn and to grow.
It's been a journey.
Thanks for being here with us. We'll see you next time.